Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Have to thank my wife for letting me have a little time to do this one. I was almost going to have to integrate her music into the presentation, which would have been a shock for many of you that follow my channel. She's very much enamored of Asian pop music, which I'm not too fond of, but that's the nature of the beast. At any rate, our topic for today I'm going to title The Age of Critical Everything. Marxist cults gone insane. And I think I'm going to be touching on pretty much everything that's making people antsy and uncomfortable and scared and discombobulated and everything right now, and explaining it from a higher level point of view that hopefully will make some sense to you, help you make some sense of the whole thing, and maybe find a better place to be mentally, spiritually, in the midst of this. Okay, so I think many of you have heard a lot lately the terms critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical thinking. Critical is a very, very popular word right now, isn't it? What does that word mean? Now, many people would say, well, critical thinking means that I'm thinking more open-mindedly and deeply and truly than anybody else. That's not what critical means. I'm sorry. It's essentially the opposite of free thinking. Critical thinking, criticism, is approaching a subject with your mind already made up. That's what a critic does. They go see a play, they listen to a musical, they listen to some new music, read a new book, and they critique it. They are expected to be critical of it. That's how they make their money, by causing conflict, creating a stir. This is how the news works nowadays. They don't make points by supporting anything. They make news by criticizing everything, finding fault, finding blame, finding an explanation of events that causes viewership to go up, gets more people engaged. And everybody knows that it's easier to engage people through hate, through distrust, through dark emotions than it is through positive emotions. Although that is part of the dark side of critical. And many people will claim that they are critical thinkers when they are also claiming to be avatars of light and oneness and unconditional love. Sorry, you can't have it both ways. Okay, so criticism, everybody understands what that word means. Criticism is you are taking a negative stance towards whatever opinion the adversary has promoted. Critical race theory is taking an opposite stance to a racist, a white supremacist racist, which makes you a black supremacist racist, or a racist of some other division that you define fluidly. And this is how Asians have gone from being part of the underdog minority, the people of color, to being considered now white. Being critical means taking the opposite position, which is part and parcel of Marxism. Marxism is a very simplified economic theory that says that we need to break people into these two opposing elements, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, and take this division and use it to put a wedge into society to basically deconstruct culture at its roots. And this is what Marxism is all about. This is what communism is all about. It is about destroying traditional culture. They want to destroy the family. They want to destroy the male-female relationship. They want to destroy religion. They want to destroy economies. They want to destroy countries. Now, why would you want to destroy all that? One might ask. Well, the answer is right in the Communist Manifesto, because you want to build something different that you think is going to be better. And that different, better of the Marxists is this globalist oneness. Everybody's going to be part of this one communist state that's going to do good for everybody and give everybody their equal share and treat everybody equally, except for it's got to be run by some people, and we've got to be more equal than others because we're so smart that we devised this scheme. And this is what has happened with every communist utopia, every socialist utopia that was allowed to run free rein without severe checks and balances from a system that was more like the U.S. Constitution. And yes, there are some European countries that claim to, people will point to, see, you can do socialism, right? Well, you can, if you have suitable checks and balances. That's what democratic socialism is all about. And a sense that you can't have everything. You can't create something from nothing. You can't magically wave your wand and everybody becomes rich. You cannot magically wave your wand and all the fossil fuels go away. This is lunatic thinking. And we see it all over our culture right now. We see groups splintering off, people splintering off into Marxist cults. This is what cultural Marxism is. Marxist cults of we're right, they're wrong, we have to get all the power so we can force our right over their wrong, and everything will be perfect. This is kind of a Peter Pan fantasy, let me tell you. It is a very, very low consciousness way of viewing problems. The problems of humanity are complex. They're not fairy tale, Disney fantasy problems. The battle of the sexes is complex. And there are two sides to it, and there are very good arguments on both sides. And if you let one point of view rule, you will doom our species. Similarly, the race issue. You can see it morphing with time because, well, gosh, we can't get black people to be racist enough, so we're going to get white people to be racist for them. And this is the essence of Black Lives Matter. The vast majority of black people don't support Black Lives Matter because they've seen what these organizations have done to their communities. They've actually destroyed black businesses, preferentially because that's the businesses that are more successful in their neighborhood. And BLM is actually founded and funded by communists and globalists. Not people who give a damn rat's ass about race. They are using that issue to gain power. And this is what cult Marxism is all about. It's finding some divisive way to insinuate a minority into power by making them the virtue cult, we're the pure ones because we believe this and we believe that. And this is the woke cult of the left, the Western left. And this is the Eastern philosophical cult of others, the spiritual arm of cult Marxism. Says, oh, East is good, West is bad. Oh, colonialism was a horrible time where the Europeans killed and blah, 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 blah. Well, anybody who's really studied history knows that all people have abused and used other people. It's not a European thing. In fact, Asian cultures have been some of the most abusive and destructive ever. True. Even Buddhist governments were very abusive to their subjects because they considered them lower forms of incarnations. Oh, well, they're low souls that need to serve us. So they can by through service, maybe they can work their way up to my enlightenment. Okay? This is cult Marxism. Buddhism is cult Marxism. That's where it all started. And Marx and Engels merely inherited that through, if you know the history of Europe in the late 1700s, early 1800s, you will know that there were sort of two primary directions that Europeans were heading, the European intellectuals. One was in a purely science worship way of everything can be explained by some new theory, the social Darwinists that wanted to basically make everything into an automated process that you could just turn on and get humanity working the way you wanted it to. And the other, which was sort of a spiritual version of that said, well, this is part of a spiritual process of making us function, making us learn through this unreal stuff around us. And it, the spiritual idea of that is this oneness cult that says, oh, this is all an illusion. And I'm really the supreme consciousness experiencing itself through this one little life and integrating that experience into the hive mind brain of the universe. Okay, this is how cult Marxism works on spiritual people, and it is a cult. How do you tell a cult from truth? Cults become dogmatic. They attack. They become very critical if anybody speaks against their cult. I know, I've hit that many, many times in discussions on Quora, on Facebook, in YouTube videos. People want to attack. This is criticism. This is critical thinking. Attack dog thinking is what you're advocating when you say, I'm a critical thinker. No, you're not. Well, you are, of course, but that's not something to virtue signal about. When you say you are a critical thinker, you say you are a closed-minded person who has already decided what the truth is, or what the foundations of truth are. And I would venture to say that that is a very narrow-minded, dogmatic person who is no better than the most fundamentalist Christian or Muslim or fundamentalist communist, hardcore Marxist in the world. It's dogma. It may be happy lollipop, sugar plum fairy dogma that makes you feel good, but it's still dogma. It's not true. It can't possibly be true. It doesn't fit the evidence all around you. Look at this picture behind me. We're all one. No, we're not. We're all different. We're in different bodies. We are different souls. We don't share all the same knowledge, ever. There is absolutely zero zilch proof of that fallacy, other than this very low consciousness first spiritual experience of the near-death experience, which I talk about frequently, but I'll mention again now. Okay, what is a near-death experience? Which you can get through spiritual practice, which you can get from psychedelics, which you can also get from really coming near death. What that is, in fact, is the beginning of the process of reincarnation. Now, the process of reincarnation involves sorting souls into the heavens where they are best suited to. There are Christian heavens. There are Christian heavens for really goody Christians who really walk the talk and mean what they say and live to the best extent that they can by the principles of Christianity, which don't actually involve, I'll get forgiven for whatever I do if I just say, I believe in Jesus, forgive me. That's bullshit Christianity. That's spiritual bypassing Christianity. It's not easy like that. And I defy you to find one thing in the Bible that says that's easy. Even if it's all bullshit, the Gospels have a lot of good stuff in them, and it doesn't say that you can get forgiven for anything by saying, I love Jesus. I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. So spiritual bypassing is, oh, there's my wife. She's coming in looking like she doesn't want me to be working today. Maybe she'll flip you the bird if she's really good. Oh, there she's gonna get a smile. Oh, that's my lady. At any rate, being critical is the first step to hate. It's the first step to dogma. It is the opposite of being open-minded, of being tolerant, of accepting that not everybody sees things from the same point of view. You want to give them a little dance, dear? I'm afraid we're going to have to cut this short pretty soon because we're getting way off topic. What you need? Need my... Oh, you want my phone? Uh-oh, what you gonna do with my phone? And that leads to the second part of my title, Marxist cults gone insane. This is what's happening right now, is we're being split into these cults of fallacious beliefs, of critical beliefs, which, I mean, are basically similar to the fundamentalist difference between Christians, Muslims, Jews, and the now defunct pagans. These are destructive cults. And any religion that believes it has to destroy other beliefs to be successful is a cult. So if your belief is like that, you are a cultist. I'm sorry. Doesn't matter if you're Christian, doesn't matter if you're a Marxist, doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or Indonesian or Chinese or Singaporean or whatever. If you have an idea that your particular view of perfection, and largely today's views of perfection are very political, You're a cultist. My country, right or wrong, is a cult statement. My party, right or wrong, is a cult statement. My ideology, right or wrong, is a cult statement. Now you're saying, well, Rob, wait a minute, aren't you preaching a cult here? No, I am not, in fact. In fact, I am preaching the only thing that is not a cult. I am preaching the gospel of the multiverse. Because the first creator realized pretty quickly that his family was going to develop these cults. Some of them were going to lead others, lead and bleed and misread others and use them and abuse them spiritually. That's how it all started. And the multiverse is the solution to this problem. It's like the ultimate timeout. Okay, if you can't get along and you keep falling down this path of becoming so dogmatic that nobody wants to be around you, you will eventually wind up in your own universe, playing with your own toy soldiers. That is the fate of cult Marxists who don't reform, who cannot learn to be tolerant, who cannot learn to be patient. Now, you could be tolerant and patient without being loving. You don't have to accept bullshit from people, and I'm not advocating that. What you need to understand is that there will be differences. And unless you're God Almighty Himself, the first creator who knows the full plan, you might be wrong. You might be wrong for the universe that you're in, because the first creator only really cares about the handful of universes that feed the divine plan. All the other universes are just post office boxes for gods that have their own idea of perfection. And He's got nothing against any of these other gods. They're welcome to go their merry way to try to attract as many souls as they want over there to play their games. Not a bit possessive, not a bit jealous. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't need any worship. Doesn't need any ritual. You're welcome to do it. You're welcome to rename Him anything you want or worship anything you want, as long as you don't commit the cardinal sin. But even if you do, you can. You're just going to wind up in your own universe or in a universe of a dark god that is probably going to punish you for cardinal sins, which the cardinal karmic sin is tyranny. Forcing yourself, forcing your way on others, forcing your beliefs on others, being nastily critical of others when you don't need to be. That's going to get you a strike. You get enough strikes, nobody wants to play with you anymore. Nobody wants you on their team. So just stop striking out. And the neat thing about reincarnation is you get as many times at bat as you need to figure it out. Now, how much more perfect could that be? Imagine an endless game of baseball where every player gets to work on becoming the best at whatever position that they fancy, including cheerleader, including audience, including announcer, including promoter, including the kid who sells popcorn outside the stadium, including the guy who's scalping tickets outside. There's a role for everybody, and you don't need to push. You start pushing to the front of the line, and you're going to find yourself in the wrong line. So, what can we conclude from this? We are in this age of critical everything, and it's part of this process we're going through. It's part of the end of the seventh day of creation. It was described in prophecies in many traditions. A time of great strife, a great anger, conflict, hopelessness. Yeah, it is that. What one needs to remember is that this is just one life. And to at least some extent, we've all written the script of that life that we're living. Our choices have made who we are. Now, granted, there are some people that didn't get to make very many great choices, who were born third world countries and had to scrap for their existence all their lives. Never really got to explore anything higher, like your average spoiled Westerner who grows up in, say, the United States or Europe, that grew up in a fairly wealthy middle to upper class family and thought education was a right, not a privilege. Felt entitled to do pretty much anything they wanted because I'm a woman, or because I want to be a woman, or because whatever, I'm black, because I'm smart, because I'm this, because I'm that, I'm entitled. A lot of people didn't have the opportunity to be entitled. Does that mean that somebody punished them, somebody didn't like them, God is bad? No. You don't know their history. You don't know where they came from, how many times they've been human, how many different lives they've had, and why they chose this particular life. And it is a choice. It's not an open-ended choice. You're given a range of choices by the counselors that you have when you go to heaven. And those counselors change depending on which heaven you are in. And every soul starts out, every life, at consciousness level 0. Now, some souls, that's all they've ever experienced. That's their first independent incarnation. And those souls don't get a lot of choices. They sort of get the slop jobs. We need a soul here. We create one, new soul. You start at level 0, you go through an incarnation, you experience what needs to be experienced there, and at the end of that, you get to move on with the experiences you have, what you've learned, and you start the process of learning and growing and expanding your consciousness. And I'm pretty sure that all of you can think of people in your life who have a very low level of consciousness. It's almost like they work on autopilot. They know exactly what to do in every situation. They're absolutely sure of themselves. They live their life as if they were on autopilot. And that is a 0 level consciousness. That is a substitute soul for another soul that is living on with more free will in an alternate universe. This is how the multiverse works. This is how it forms. The multiverse is made up of many universes, some of which are very temporary, very ephemeral. They might only exist for the split second of time where you might have gotten into an accident because you weren't paying attention to the road and accidentally killed somebody that wasn't supposed to be killed in this universe. And you wink out to your alternate universe and the killing happens there. And a new soul is winked in to replace you. And when their service is done, they get to move on and do something else. And you might return to your original universe, none the wiser, with a blank in memory. Wow, I zoned out for a second there. It's a wonder I didn't kill somebody. And this other soul, after serving their short term as a replacement, gets a choice. They get the choice of continuing to learn as a zero level virtual soul and go get in the pool for maybe a more responsible position of replacement, the replacement of a more high value soul in a universe where they get to learn higher value lessons. Or they may decide to, well, I'm going to make a choice this time. I'm going to let my spiritual guides give me some options, and I'm going to start making decisions for myself. This is how we gain experience, by making our own decisions. This is what consciousness is all about. And this ties back to the original subject, that if you are taking a critical position on anything, you have sublimated your decisions on that matter to subconscious behavior. If you have decided that no matter what, I believe the Bible is absolute gospel, everything in it is absolute truth, and anybody who says it isn't is an enemy, is servant of Satan. Okay, this is a critical position. Wouldn't you agree? And this is a dogmatic position. Critical positions are dogmatic positions. They don't care what's right or wrong. They are on their side and they want to fight. This is why, if you look at the history of criticism, one of the most successful forms of film criticism was a couple of guys named Siskel and Ebert. I think they're both dead now, but if you ever watched their show, they would comment on a movie and they would have their own opinions, and they would sometimes argue and they would sometimes agree. And it was interesting to see their points and to see that, you know, in many cases, you didn't agree with either of them. Well, I love the movie. They thought it sucked, but I thought, you know, and you got an idea that criticism could not be dogmatic, or it became stale and evil and hateful. And nowadays, you see a fake version of that on shows like The View, where you've got supposedly a panel of people who are analyzing some issue critically, but they're analyzing it from within a bubble of right think, woke or unwoke right think, which, you know, there's a new unwoke cult forming in response to the woke cult. The fake left is creating this fake right now. And they're both very dogmatic positions that are not open-minded, that are ultimately going to cause conflict, possibly cause civil war in the United States, in Europe, are already causing civil wars in many countries. This is the nature of the beast. This is the challenge we're in. Because ultimately, at the end of this day 7 of creation, there's only so many spots on the good ship humanity going forward in the prime universe, in the system of universes that execute, that co-create the future of the divine plan. Not all futures. There are plenty of other futures created by science fiction writers who are very popular, and as long as their works are being read, those futures have a certain life to them. But their life is very ephemeral. Their life is pretty much built around the stories that were told, and the extent that the stories could create a continuum of future history. And if you look at the efforts of some of the most prolific fiction writers, especially in the area of fantasy or science fiction, you will note that one of the things that they focused on was trying to build a continuum, a continuous history. This is why I often talk about Tolkien as a writer. After he wrote the trilogy and The Hobbit, he wanted to write something that would tie the whole history of Middle-earth together and make it a coherent whole, like he saw in some of the works that he based his fiction on, which were the works of folk history of various European cultures mostly. Similarly, Isaac Asimov is another author that you should read. His Foundation series and the Robot series and the Galactic Empire series, he worked his entire career trying to tie together into a coherent future, and was actually fairly successful. His works are not that well read anymore, though, so maybe they're losing their glimmer. Many of the things that he proposed were illogical, were outgrowths of the postmodernist science worship. So Asimov was definitely of the camp of, well, if we just understood all of science, we would understand all of human behavior and we could predict it. In fact, that was a core assumption of his Foundation series, that there was some futurist scientist, Hari Seldon, that created a new science called psychohistory, or I think that's what it was called. I don't know. It's been a while since I read the books, but basically created this science where you could predict the future of human populations if you looked at them on a large enough scale. Psychohistory, I think that's what it called. Anyway, that was the premise of that series of books, and interestingly enough, it ended up with the conclusion that tied the Robot series together with this other series and said that, well, what was really going on is that these super robots that were created before Earth even began to explore the stars set off their own plan to guide humanity towards their best future. And that this whole psychohistory thing was basically a psyop of these androids. This one particular android, which was like the super android, that was the hero of the very first I, Robot novel. Interesting reading. I would highly encourage it. There's a lot of things I encourage reading, even if I don't agree with them, even if I find their premises dystopian, because they're useful thought experiments. And this is the nature of being open-minded, not critical-minded, of free thinking, not critical thinking. To the extent that you can become more free-thinking, I think you will be better prepared for what's coming in whatever universe you happen to be in when it comes. There are many versions of the apocalypse on the way. There are many parallel timelines active now. Each parallel timeline is the timeline of a universe of one of the new gods who has grown up in this system of reincarnation and karma. They've gotten to a level where they have their own universe, just like the first gods, only they've earned it through reincarnation and karma. They've had to pay their dues for it. And the whole of creation has been about shifting over from a system where the kids got the keys to the car for nothing, daddy let them run wild with creation, to a system that makes you pay for your privileges, makes you earn them. You don't get to be Zeus throwing thunderbolts around anymore. That's why there's no Zeuses throwing thunderbolts around on the earth anymore. Even though there's many stories of that in our folk memory of these all-powerful, mighty gods that would demand service from their slaves, effectively. Read the Bible in its original version. Genesis is full of gods demanding basically slavery service from their followers. I'll give you victory in this battle if you give me so many cattle, so many virgins, so many sacrifices, so much gold. It's in the Bible. It's being demanded by your wonderful Yahweh. That supposed almighty, all-powerful, wonderful God that Jews, Christians, and Muslims worship. Sorry, that's not God. That is a God, and there are many gods like that who have a big ego, who want to be the most powerful, who think that they can be more powerful than their father if they just can get enough souls worshiping them. Or even better, donating their soul to them, letting them have their soul essence, which is kind of what the oneness cult is all about. Okay, if you think that that is the heaven you want to go to, that's what that experience is. You're seeing this bright light. Oh, everybody's connected. Everybody's one. Everybody says they love me and they want me to be with them. This is the advertisement for Borg heaven. This heaven of oneness where they assimilate your soul and they make all your decisions for you and they send you on missions and they make you see those missions as something good, as bringing enlightenment to the people that aren't enlightened, freeing the enlightened people from the unenlightened people through death and destruction and chaos. Yeah, they can send images like that and make you think you're doing wondrous good when you're doing horrible evil, when you are committing karmic sins. Do you have a responsibility for those sins? Yes, you do, because you gave your soul to that dark entity, to that dark God. Until you free your soul from that dark God through critical... free thinking, not critical thinking. Okay, because by being critical of that God, you'll just get sucked into another God's universe. You've got to free your mind to be of your own kind. And each soul is an individual. There is no other soul that is like you. There is no other soul that has the same capabilities, the same shortcomings, the same pluses, the same minuses. Has followed the same path, or ever will follow the same path. You are unique. You're making your own way. And you've got an incredible system to do it in. This karma and reincarnation is a great system if you learn how to play it. If you understand the game, it's actually a fun game to play because you make your choices for the right reasons. You make your choices not because I want power, I want riches, I want this, I want. You make your choices because I can grow this way. I can learn this way. I want to learn more about this. I want to experience this, for better or worse. Because I know unless I experience things from many, many angles, my Merkaba is not going to grow. The Merkaba is the essence of the soul. It is the entire structure of the soul is about experience and decisions. What we've experienced and what decisions we made about those experiences generate the field that is us. Really. The real us that goes on after we die. This is the soul. And you shape it. You don't shape it in a vacuum. You have to shape it in the presence of other souls. What karma does is it's sort of an attraction-repulsion force. Okay, as you gain experience, as your Merkaba gains some polarity, some souls are attracted to you, some souls are repulsed from you. Depending on your incarnation, you may be stuck in a vehicle where you have no control at that point over that attraction and repulsion. You just feel it. There's some people you like to be with that make you feel energetic, that give you a sense of empowerment, a sense of fulfillment. And those are the people you want to spend your time with. Those are the things, not just people, because souls can be ideas too, right? Souls can be anything. Everything has a soul. Whatever you're passionate about. I'm passionate about astronomy. There's a soul of astronomy. There's a god of astronomy. There's a whole hierarchy of gods underneath that god of astronomy that are specialists in different pieces of astronomy. That's what being a god in the new system is all about. It's a very scientific system. That's why we have science. That's why we have the laws of physics and chemistry, because there are gods of everything who earned it by giving those things a name, by describing new laws, testing them again and again until, you know what? Most of the time it works this way. Let's make that a law. And the senior council gets together, maybe not the senior gods council, but certainly the senior council of the gods of astronomy get together and say, you know what? It's going to be this way. And that's exactly what our scientists are doing, is feeding that with their experiments. This is how new gods get created. Through science, through art, through mastering the skills of government and organization. You are basically, by pursuing that, you're basically pursuing a master's degree in godhood. And to the degree you can be successful without committing the karmic sin of tyranny, which is not easy, is it? And I think even our academics, the artists and the scientists of academic life, are guilty of as much tyranny as any political leader, by saying this is good art, this is bad art, this is right, this theory must be right, because if it isn't, then we're going to attack you and not make sure you never get your paper published, maybe even never get your PhD. So there, that's tyranny. That's academic tyranny. That's artistic tyranny. The folks involved in the media who are doxing people, who are dissing people who have different beliefs than them, who have a different idea of the truth than them, not giving them a fair platform to argue, to discuss, to prove the merits of their case. That is tyranny, karmic sin. I don't care how successful you are, how much money you're making, how many followers you have, how much adulation you have in the world. Tyrants are not going to find themselves on a very nice path after this incarnation is over. So don't envy these people, please. You need to really feel sorry for them. I mean, not so sorry that you'll enable their tyranny, because those who enable tyrants carry some of the guilt. A parent that is constantly telling their kid they're so wonderful, even if they're, punching Joey in the eye, or cheating on their exams, or who knows what. There's a lot of things that parents enable in their children that is encouraging tyranny, encouraging narcissism. Narcissism is an early manifestation of tyranny. It is, my viewpoint is the right viewpoint. Whatever way I see things is the right way of viewing things, and anybody else who sees things differently is somehow bad. This is narcissism, and it is a form of tyranny. It's a tyranny against yourself because you're lying to yourself. You are trying to control yourself through telling yourself lies. And this is why this law of attraction cult is also a form of tyranny. It's tyranny against your own self. Telling yourself that if I just think things hard enough, I'm going to have anything I want come to me. This is delusional. You're deluding yourself. You're committing a tyranny against your own soul. And to the extent that you pull people into this tyranny, you use and abuse them to get what you want, what you wanted to attract to yourself, which most of these people do. You are becoming a greater tyrant. To the extent that when you don't get what you want, you turn against your cult leaders. Well, that's another form of tyranny. Hate is tyranny. By hating somebody, instead of pitying them or distancing from them, you are pulling yourself into their sin. Now, sometimes there's no avoiding it, right? If somebody comes and takes your stuff and leaves you with nothing to eat, you got to fight back, right? You got to defend yourself. You don't want to end your life. You don't want your life ended. Maybe you do, but you didn't ask for that, and you have no obligation to let others exert their tyranny on you. But there's a difference between defending yourself and becoming a tyrant in your own right. And there will be some versions of the future that will be rather dystopian, where we'll maybe have a nuclear war, and there will be only a few people survive. Or maybe there's going to be another asteroid collision on a par with what ended the last ice age, or worse. Or maybe there will be another mega volcano go off, or another mega earthquake that's going to cause massive global flooding, nuclear winter, ash winter. These things will happen on planets. They will happen in certain futures at certain timelines, and some are inevitable, some are unavoidable. I'm not going to say which is going to happen in which universe because I don't know. I'm not dogmatic enough to dictate that. I can say what will happen in some universes because I see prophecies. Every prophecy is a version of truth that gains solidity through the number of souls it engages. Well, the biblical prophecies have engaged a lot of souls, haven't they? There are other prophecies encoded in modern media, popular movies that have gained a lot of popularity. The Matrix, The Terminator, etc., etc. Those have gained a following and have a lot of people believing in that version of apocalypse. And those versions exist. And to the extent that you're attracted to participating in that universe, to engaging with that universe, well, maybe that's what you get. That's what karma does. It's entanglement. This is where we tie into quantum mechanics, which is another subject I delve into occasionally because I have a physics background. I actually studied at Princeton, didn't get a PhD. I dropped out after a year because that wasn't where I was passionate. And at that point, I had a passion to go have a normal life, go get a job and have a family, have a relationship, a real relationship for a change, maybe have some kids. That's what I wanted at the time, and I dropped out of Princeton. I know a lot about this stuff. Anyway, I stay up with the latest stuff in physics, and I know what's going on. Quantum entanglement is evidence of karma at a particle level. And that same force, the karma is a force. It works at all levels for all souls because everything in the multiverse is a manifestation of a soul at some level of consciousness. Now, the vast majority of those souls are at level 0 consciousness. They're just running a program. And that's an important level of consciousness to have because we can't have every soul be a god. That's how we started out things. Every soul had the same abilities, the same capabilities as the first soul, as their father, the original God. And it was a mess. A horrible mess. Imagine a nursery where the kids could create any toy they wanted, could throw it at each other, could do any kind of harm to each other that they wanted, as much pain as, more pain than was imaginable, and nobody died, but there was a lot of pain and suffering in that pre-multiverse era. A lot more than exists right now. As much as you think that reincarnation is a journey of pain and suffering, you ain't seen nothing compared to how it was. And you never will, because that doesn't exist anymore. That's why we have these limitations. These are the checks and balances that keep souls from doling out too much pain, from getting too much suffering. This is why we have reincarnation amnesia, why we forget each life. If we remembered all the pain and suffering that we'd ever experienced, that's all that we'd have to deal with. It's a blessing to forget. It's also a blessing to occasionally have a glimmer of remembrance, to have these vague notions of a better time, a perfect time. Gosh, I wish I could go back to that. There are many lives that I have remembrance of, many moments I have remembrance of in my past lives that I would like to re-experience. Many souls that I know I touched at one point or another that I would like to commune with again. Maybe on better terms. Because I've burned bridges just like anybody else does. And you will all burn bridges in the course of your training of yourself. Decisions are not easy. There's not always a right path. And there's no essentially wrong decision. Even making no decision is a form of a decision. What will lead ultimately to isolation is karmic sin, decisions that are tyrannical, decisions that bend somebody to your will, bend another soul to your will, force another soul to experience something that wasn't part of their contract. Now, you don't know what their contract was. You don't know what they wanted to experience in this life. So there's no right answer there either. And there will be times where you're going to be faced with, okay, it's a life or death situation. Kill or be killed. What do I do? And you'll make a decision, and that will be part of the shaping of your Merkaba, for better or worse. And you won't know a priori what the right decision was. But whatever you decide will be your decision, your responsibility. And if you make those decisions subconsciously through programming, which is the essence of all military training, all political indoctrination, is to basically teach you to make subconscious decisions about things you should be more conscious about deciding on. This is how the German nation was turned into Nazis, or Nazi sympathizers or Nazi supporters, or ones that would look the other way when their neighbors suddenly disappeared. Same thing is happening in communist China. Same thing happened in communist USSR. Same thing happened in all communist countries. And the same thing is starting to happen in Western countries now as they become more totalitarian, more communist and or fascist. Communism and fascism are just two different ways you can go down the path towards totalitarianism. You can do it by nationalistic parties. You can do it by globalistic parties of communist utopia. And they're both bad. Neither one is a solution. They are both going to lead you down, your country down, or maybe even the whole world down the road towards a totalitarian end. And the end of totalitarianism is eventually power gets concentrated in the hands of one megalomaniac, a Stalin, a Mao, a Xi, a Hitler, a Napoleon, an Alexander, a Genghis Khan. You can look all throughout history, and what happens when that person dies, which they inevitably do, the whole thing collapses into chaos. And if that's the way you want to go, that's the way the world will go in the universe that you're occupying. If that's not what you want, then I suggest you start learning to make decisions more consciously, and consciously oppose all forms of tyranny. Tyranny in your own government, tyranny in other governments. And you have to basically decide which tyranny is worse, which one needs to be stopped first. Now, my personal opinion on today's global situation is that the tyranny of what I refer to as the new axis is the worst. The tyranny of the CCP, Communist China, Putin's Russia, the Ayatollah's Iran, and the World Economic Forum, which has been working behind the scenes with all of them and many other countries, basically creating technologies to control everybody. Creating technologies, creating ideologies, creating programs of control that are designed to destabilize all of the most healthy countries, which I wouldn't classify the United States as a very healthy country anymore, but it was at one time. In my childhood, when I grew up, it was a pretty healthy country. And it got more healthy as we completed the destruction of the specter of racism, which happened in the 60s. And that was a good thing. That was a wonderful thing. When I was young, pretty much the sex issue was gone. Women were empowered and enabled then. Yes, they still largely chose to eventually have children and disconnect from the workforce and become mothers. And that was a choice. It wasn't forced on anybody. Well, maybe it was in some cases. I didn't see that. What I saw growing up in the 50s and 60s and 70s was pretty equal opportunity for the sexes, and an acknowledgement that there were two different sexes, that there were different priorities that those sexes had programmed into them. And if you went by your biological programming, you made decisions that were more biological than mental or spiritual. But that wasn't forced on anybody. And the idea that you can have it all as a woman is very, very dark. It's dysfunctional. It's making women think that they have to have it all or they are not a complete woman. And that is the most darkly chauvinistic thing that I could think of. to put women in that mindset. And you know, it's causing a darkness on the men's side too, of, well, you know what, it's the woman's time now and you need to get out of the way, you need to support the women because it's our turn. Has created a really dark phenomenon on the male side of guys that are either disconnecting with the whole sex thing. Of, geez, I'd rather whack off to porn than have to deal with what it takes to get a date with a decent woman these days. Or playing, you know, these players that, you know how to do the line, they know how to play the heartstrings of the feminine programming and get them to bed, have some fun, and then move on to the next one. And there seems to be very few old school guys who just want to have a family, who want to have a real relationship, a long-term relationship. And this is at its heart the core of the problem of our species, which is now on the decline. Contrary to the folks that are telling you, oh, there's too many people in the world, humanity's population is shrinking. And if it keeps on its current course, which is being accelerated by technology, by folks in the World Economic Forum who think there's too many people, we need to cut back on them because we don't need so many people, we just need the robots that we're creating, and we need the android bodies that we're creating for us so we can live forever, and we just don't need all these dumb people that are getting in our way and want to have rights and want to have this and want to have that. There are elites who want to exterminate most of humanity and or replace them with androids. This is a truth. And in some universes, they will be successful in doing that. Now, these are tyrannical souls, aren't they? These are not going to the nicer universes. These are going to be going to places where they will be increasingly isolated for their dark karma. And this is a choice. Nobody's forcing them to do this, right? God doesn't care whether they do that because they are falling into the trap that he set for such souls when he started seeing them amongst his family. So fuck them. It's going to be really tough for a few generations till we get through sorting these assholes out of the humanity that will continue in the prime universe. Be patient. Don't fall down the dark side and become one of them, because we're nearly there. Okay, my wife's telling me it's time to cut this one short, and I don't know, maybe get a little amorous over here. Who knows what this woman has in her mind. At any rate, I think that's been a good session. We'll see you next time on the Omnist Hour with Rob Trump. Like, share, subscribe, interact in any way you like, and we'll see you next time.